Chapter 26, Episode 9. Sally knew back in Hong Kong that there was a priority hit in Jerusalem. It was big money because he was a hard target. The freighter ride had been endurable. Many freighters had accommodations for a few low-demand passengers. Billy wanted to try it. It wasn't much cheaper than other forms of transportation, but Billy offered to help them with their computer system a minimum of 3 hours a day. Their system was in working order. He taught the operator some details about commuting they weren't aware of, how to make life easier. They didn't have much to learn, but they enjoyed having an energetic youth among them to talk to about things most people knew little about. A smart boy. He spent most of his days working on little computing challenges or talking about open water navigation and Panama Cannel's second lane. Ships paying up to $250,000 for a trip through. The mega port in China built in the ocean. Ports everywhere needing to expand because the ships were getting so big, because a big ship was more efficient, because fuel was expensive. Millions of dollars expensive. There were so many ships that there was a plan for the Silk Road. The project had potential problems. Ships wouldn't go away soon. Maybe they would be less when people consumed less imports. Save a lot of ships if people grew food locally. The crew loved to hear Billy talk about how the world was changing and what was next. Sally didn't have as much fun. She watched the water sometimes for hours. She trained for hours at a time. The crew left her to it. They did ask her when they met for meals. Billy had become part of the crew, which made Sally part of the crew. They asked her for the first few days if she was training for the Olympics. She admitted it was just a hobby. She loved to run. She didn't say she needed to be wired for the work she did sometimes. She loved to be fit, and that was true. She was on the outside wall of a building under construction with a narrow view of the front door of a bank. The only shot that Billy had discovered in their week of research was a construction site. Sally had to climb scaffolding at night and wait the hours of dawn before her target went into and came out of the bank. Going into the bank was blocked by one of his guards. That same guard held the door open for him on the way out. Every day. There was always at least 2 seconds where the target was exposed. Sally had not enjoyed watching the sun come up from her perch. Billy didn't want her to turn her smart device on until shortly before the target had entered the building. No message meant the operation was still a go. Billy had his drones watching for any movement from the roofs of buildings close to Sally. Now it came down to Sally in the short window that would happen before she had to stretch her legs and get the fuck back down to the ground. Focus, Sally. Your legs are okay. It was time to poke her barrel between the flapping tarps and find her target. She didn't have to adjust for wind and distance, not with the gun she had. Once she had a lock on the target, the gun would have already calculated all of that, and the bullet almost always hit the target. Not a sporty way to assassinate someone. Sally didn't like it. She liked to be closer in where there was more control. She didn't like sitting in a fucking crow's nest. She had her escape plan in her head. She went over it 1,000 times in her head while she tried to occupy her time. She had to abandon the gun. She needed all her limbs to race down from one hole to the next. Fast was top priority. She would be in a cab before anyone had time to react. The fucker just wouldn't come out of the bank like he was supposed to. Sally thought she saw motion behind the glass, but no one came out. Sally didn't like it. She rolled her back to make certain it was still with her. Her not liking it was not a good sign. Fucking Billy was calling. That was bad news. He never called if it wasn't necessary. Short code text sometimes. She leaned back for a second to take the call. She had an earplug. She didn't have to lean back. She wanted to see if there was a message that she had to see. GTF sent her rolling back just as a bullet popped through the window behind her. She rolled sideways and managed to avoid the next bullet, but the third grazed her shoulder, which in a way was lucky because it knocked her off the floor of the scaffolding to the floor below. She fell on her injured shoulder. Fuck! She rolled to the next hole and jumped through. She was out of line of sight if she hurried from where she had been, where her smart device and gun lay. She smiled as she scrambled from the lower level to another lower level. She moved quickly and ignored her shoulder. It would have to wait until she was away from the building. Whoever wanted her dead was not worried about saving bullets. Someone was really pissed off at the other end of the trajectory. As she got a few levels lower, jumping from level to level, she saw her blood and slowed a little. She was worried about leaving DNA. On the last floor, she held her hand against her shoulder. Her jumping became a controlled sliding down steep steps. She heard the pinging of the bullets stop. She thought the shooter might be heat tracking her now, so she let her shoulder go and jumped the rest of the way to the ground. The bullets didn't come. The shooter hadn't seen her move behind the tarps. He had never seen her. He only knew someone was there. The shooter wasn't finished. He sent a before you GO super grenade to impress upon other assassins that they should find other jobs. It was a high-tech grenade launcher. Even the grenade was high-tech. It would explode when the shooter wanted it to explode. That place was where Sally had sat to experience, but not really enjoy, the sunrise over Jerusalem. The top scaffolding was blown apart and set into flames with a gentle explosion. Fucking place fucks me up. Billy laughed even though he didn't want to. He was relieved to see Sally jump into the cab. Sally wasn't bleeding too badly, but some. Sally could hardly get it through her head that she had come so close to being cremated. She wanted to kill somebody, whoever the fucker was, but not now. No mad revenge actions. Against the rules of survival, she would have to let it go. As much as she wanted to declare war, there was no chance. They had to leave. Billy spoke what might have been Yiddish with the help of his smart device. She looked at the ID of the driver, then at him, looking at her in the mirror. Do I use my sweet smile or do I show my badass bitch with no need for a license to kill look? She settled on a mix. Sirens could be heard going away from them, blowing up apartments, and Jerusalem wasn't unheard of. It wasn't an anti-anti thing one clan had with another clan for a few thousand years. Fit through mutual hate. The driver saw that Sally was holding her arm and bleeding. You need a hospital. No hospital. I know a Ethiopian patriarch. He is a doctor and good Christian. No one must know names. He kept driving and looking at Sally, then at Billy. Billy nodded. There was no sense Sally bleeding. Sally trusted Billy's judgment. He always selected his drivers carefully. Jews, Muslims, and Christians had their houses of the holy all in the same neighborhood. The good Christian doctor with his Jewish wife and Muslim poker friends examined Sally's bleeding wound. The bullet had done some damage to Sally's shoulder, but nothing that wouldn't heal completely in a few months. It had ripped through skin and muscle. The doctor knew what he was looking at, but he knew it was not polite to talk about it. He had seen such injuries often enough. The doctor told Sally what she couldn't do and what she must do. She listened. Billy didn't take note, but he noted it in his head. They thanked the doctor for his care and paid him for his expert work. I don't have to say it. No, you don't. Billy made a deal with a cab driver to drive them out of the city to meet a driver he arranged to be waiting. They had a few short rides and a long ride before they stopped at a bed and breakfast. As usual, it was in the most unlikely place to spend a night. There were postcards made by a relative. My wife made this picture. That would hold Billy for long enough to write a note to the professor. Sally excused herself to go to bed with her postcard, avoiding thinking about bullets. Hey, Professor, Jerusalem is a wonder. Still haven't found Jesus, but thousands of years of culture, horns blowing all the time, Jews and Christians angry about Allah. Everyone has a different hat to show whose team they support. Pretty funny, but it's not polite to laugh. Food to stop up your arteries, death by pastries. Beautiful and brutal. It really is a magical city. See you soon. Love, S. Sally laughed as Billy opened the door. Fuck off with your goddamn holy city. What? I said, I'm glad I'm not in that city. His wife is in the States working for a year at the Singularity University, a paid research sabbatical. She is a doctor of physics, a dream job for her. He has to stay here. He works. Billy? Not going to talk about the owner and his wife. Nope. We're going to lie in bed and talk about our trip. What's the next big event? All events will be small. Our participation, but we will still visit big events. Cities. How's your shoulder? It fucking hurts. You have to massage me a bit or I won't sleep.